Good morning, everybody. How are you this morning? I hope you can hear me. No intro this morning. We're getting right to it. Be ready. I see a bunch of you in the chat already. It's good to have you all this morning. Hound Jog and Bernadette Evans, Gerald Grunwald, Rick Bowser, Rafa Sieber, Raina Waddell, Hound Jog. It's good to have all you guys. I think I said Hound Jog twice, but you're double welcome. Sophia Suderman, Terry Barnes, good to see you guys. Albie Nichols, Jason Sumner. All right, now we're cooking. Man, y'all are on it this morning. I love it. I'm drinking caffeinated coffee this morning, so who knows what'll happen. I'm just saying. Oh, man. Judy Berry, it's good to have you this morning, ma'am. Tanda, good morning to you. I have a couple things I have to get ready while we're getting started here. I wasn't quite as ready as I should have been, I don't think. All right, let's see here. I'll get some things prepared while you guys, if you don't mind, go ahead and think about some topics that you're interested in this morning we could talk about. I have my document I'm getting ready so we can put those topics out. Thankfully, last week we got to almost everything. I'm not sure Linda Connor's on, but I did do her topic in my video this week on Michael the Archangel, asking about whether Michael was in any way supposed to be actually Christ. And so we took care of that topic. I thought that was a pretty good video put together. And so that worked out. I was able to get that done. It's interesting. I kind of like this, the way we're doing it now, where if I don't get to a topic, I try to get to it during the week. So far, that's worked really good. And we'll just see how that keeps going. I think it's going to be the good way to do it. I will admit, though, it has kept me from doing some of the videos that I had, like the research I had in progress already. So I'll show you this real quick. It's kind of sad. Let me show you this, though. All right. So what I'm going to do is quickly, I want to show you guys my research folder that has the stuff that I'm working on. So I have in a project folder, Bible Scribe, and I have a preparation folder. All right, so every folder you see here, and I'm not going to zoom in real close. I know it's small, but you can see every folder that is in here listed is an idea that I started research on. And this does not include the ones I've already done videos on. The ones I've already done videos on, I moved to this published folder. And so these are all the old ones that I've done. And there's another older folder that has even more. But I just wanted to show you, oh, I did Sixth Day Man, so I can put that in my published. But you can see how much, when I just get ideas and I start looking at stuff, I kind of make a folder, I start putting research in there. But you can see how much that's led to, all these different materialistic Christianity, the textual variant of Luke 23:34. Letter to my son, that needs to be put up. That's done. Jesus is begotten. That's one that I talk about a lot, but I was going to do a whole video on it. Just a lot of different things like this. Anyway, there's a few here I need to clean up. These are old, but anyway, I just want to show you. It's interesting how this goes and what God, kind of how he flows this into what we're going to do each week and the things we talk about. I do think it's important that you guys drive a little bit in that regard, so I think that that's cool. All right, let me check you guys' comments now and see what kind of things you're talking about this morning. I think I already saw Hound Jog. You mentioned Geneva Bible of 1560, so I'm going to put that on the list. I think I put you off a couple times on that one, so I won't put you off any longer. And when we get to that, I would love for you to add some context to it, because I'm somewhat unfamiliar with the Bible other than I've heard of it. But we'll look up information about it, start from scratch on it. It's no problem. Let's see here. Stacia, you said both Isaac and Ishmael were given promises. We know Isaac's, but what was Ishmael's? You know, this is an interesting... It's interesting you mentioned that, because this week, as I was studying something else, I ran across Jacob, Isaac, Ishmael, all that stuff, and I was reading through that passage. So I think we'll take a look at that. I hope I can do it justice, but at least we'll start, you know. Rick Bowser, you talk about, you say, can you talk about the angels as principalities of the nations? Yeah, I can talk about that for sure. And if you want me to give like an overview, Rick, I can do that. Or if you want me to just, you know, and I think that'll be good. I give you the overview of how it's said in the Bible, what it means, you know, who they are. Maybe that's a good way to go about it, is I'll just kind of skim through everything with a broad overview. Unless there's something specific you want, let me know about that. Good morning, Julia Thomas. Good to have you. Mr. Sam Big, Joe Fisher, Kelsey. It's good to have all you guys. Thank you for joining. Try to make sure I call everybody out. Redemax, 1977. Good morning to you. 1977. That's a good year. Interesting year. A lot of stuff happened that year. Anyway, okay. Continuing on, looking at. So Stacia, you ask if the current Muslims are from Ishmael's lineage. I'll add that to. Yeah. Okay. To your thing here. Let's see. All right. So that's good. I got that on there, Stacia. You know, Stacia, it's great that after a year or more of us interacting and talking back and forth, I finally say your name right every time. I just wanted to, you know, pat myself on the back because I finally got it. Sam Big, you say Gog and Magog gathering like the sands of the sea. Any info you have would be appreciated. Gog and Magog, yeah, okay. Let's see, Sam Big. I'll try to get that on there. Let's see. I feel like now, honestly, Sam, that you and other people have asked me about Gog and Magog enough since I did my original video on it, which was now probably at least a year or two ago, that I feel like I need to go back to it and study it again, see if I can get deeper somehow, get more information as to whether I think that actually is in our past or if it's in our future. Yeah, but we can maybe briefly talk about it today. I'll try to give you what I know about it. Okay. Ew, ritual murder video. Stacia and B. Nichols, that's gross. What are y'all talking about? I don't think I know. Or maybe I do. And there was something that happened either this week or last, and the video was like something like that. And I just couldn't watch. I just like, I'm not watching that. I skipped it. I'm not saying you guys are wrong for watching it. I'm just saying it's, I saw something like that come across the channels. So it doesn't surprise me, I guess, is all I'm saying. Sam Big, you say George Washington had a vision about the three great wars. If you know anything about that, it would also be appreciated. Yes, Sam Big, I'll mention that and talk about it. I know a lot. I know a lot about George Washington's vision. In fact, I hate to say it, and I'm not tooting my horn, but I probably have the best research on that vision and the history of it than anyone else in the entire internet or that I've ever seen. So I'll mention that. We'll talk briefly about it for sure. I would go into more detail, but you'll see why I say that in a second. Stacia, you say 1977 is a stellar year. That's great. Oh, Stasia, it's okay. Stop it, really. Rafa Sieber, you say, is there a church denomination that I feel closer to? I can answer that. Laura Masood, good morning to you. You say the day of the Lord is the term in the Old Testament every time a civilization is judged. Yeah, he seems to use that phrase a bit. It seems to sometimes refer to more than one event. Yeah. Joe Fisher, you ask, is there any literature we are reading on the side? It's a good question, Joe. I was reading some of the Dead Sea Scrolls this week. What else? I was reading a couple of the church fathers very heavily, trying to examine them again. I want to say Irenaeus, but I don't think it was Irenaeus. I read some of Clement this week. What was the one? Oh yeah, I mentioned that last week. I read through the second book of Enoch again. Then there's also some things, let's see, man, some research stuff that I have been reading through too. It's going to be hard for me to remember all of it, but I think, Joe, that may answer your question a little bit. Laura Masood, you say, does it appear to you that God judges cities? Book of Revelation, Sodom, Jerusalem, Nineveh. Does he still do the same if he doesn't change? I think, Laura, that if I'm not mistaken, you've asked this question before, and I don't remember if we actually talked about it. I'll put it on our list today. I'll put it on our list. We'll see if we can get to it. Now I've got a big list. And that actually, I don't know, Laura, that to me is a one that I could take into a separate video this week, because there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot to go through, kind of examining each of those different cities that were judged and why. I'm thinking of something I want to say, but I may reserve that, and we'll see if we can get to that. I may try to just leave that one until this week, where I could put some study behind it. I think that might be good. It's kind of related to Rick Bowser's question about the angel principalities, really, I think, and that's kind of where my brain's going. But so yeah, interesting. And Sam Big, you say, another question, if we're at 7,500, are we 500 years into God's rest? Oh, that's a really good question, Sam. I kind of want to address that. Sam, that's 3 questions for you. I think you're at your limit today. No, there's no limit. I'm just teasing, but I do have to make decisions on what we can get to. That's a really good one, though. I really like that question. I like that question. There's so much meat in that. Oh man, shoot. John Jones, you say 500 years after Sam, 7th day starts the year 6,000. Yeah, that's somewhat correct. Yeah, that's somewhat correct there, John Jones. There's a lot of things in Sam's statement that we can deconstruct, we can think about, talk about. That's why I like that question so much. Rafa Sieber, you say, I'm also trying to understand my place in the ecclesia, also missed church, but I was Catholic. Now alone at home and with you guys every Sunday, and God by my side every day seems now more than ever. That's awesome, Rafa. I mean, I'm just glad to be a part of your walk with God, and that we all are, really. And I think that's a good thing. I do, like we talked about, I wish that you had some contact with local Christians that you really care about. You probably do, actually, but that's important too. So let's not forget about that. But I'm so glad we're a part of your daily and weekly walk. That's amazing. It's really good. All right, Stacia, your comments are getting scrubbed. Ugh. Well, we know how YouTube rolls, so please be aware, guys. And I'll say this again. I think I said it maybe last week sometime, but what happens is they start flagging you if you have terms they don't like, and they start monitoring you more closely, and then so it's almost like they put you on a different loop for your comments to go through, and they start double checking and triple checking them, and they go really slow, and then, like I've said before, they kind of either trickle out or they just stop them, and I can't explain it. Again, I wish that I had that chat implemented on my website for a while. We tried it out. It works really good. There's no censorship there, but of course the YouTube comments is just so convenient that I think that's kind of where we've landed. But I apologize for that. All right, so let's go to some quick announcements before we get started. Just so you guys are aware, especially for the new people on the stream, it seems like we have a good group today, so I want to make sure we say this stuff. Everyone is welcome to this live stream. Everyone, no matter your beliefs, no matter if you despise what we're talking about or you agree wholeheartedly, you are welcome here, provided that we can keep conversation in a civil manner, and that you don't spam our comments and detract from the enjoyment of others on the live stream. So everyone is welcome. And what do we do here? You guys suggest the topics every week, and that's what we've been doing over the past 10 minutes here. I get topics from you guys, and I try to tackle them one by one as we go through the live stream. And I'll decide the order we can go in and how much we can get to, but then we'll discuss and share information on each of those topics, both me and you guys in the chat. Be aware that I do have other platforms. I have a full website it contains all of my work. I've tried to make it pretty easy to get around in there and search for different things I've done, things I've worked on. But that's available to you. You can also contact me by email from that website. It has my email address. You can just email me directly. And by the way, I have lots of conversations weekly, daily with lots of you guys, and I really enjoy that. So don't think that you'll ever be bothering me to email me and ask me a question. And then as far as what's new this week, I'll just show my website briefly so you guys can see I have updated it with the latest stuff. So I did this video that we talked about, who is Michael the Archangel? Is he Jesus Christ? And that's the name of the video on YouTube and also on Rumble. Then on last week, I have our live stream still here at the top. I'll replace that after this one today. And then the Sci-Cry video series on Godzilla, I think, is, to me, very important and very telling, full of information that I think gives us a little hope, if you will, for the future of not only America, but the world. I do believe that these three movies, only these three Godzilla movies, have somewhat hidden, so to speak, message. It's not really that hidden if you examine it closely, and that's what I've done. The first two videos, Who is Godzilla and Who is Godzilla King of Monsters, are out. The third one, Who is Godzilla versus Kong, is not out yet. I'm still working on that one, and that will be out soon. But if you kind of want to know what's going on in the world, these videos are very interesting. I think they expose a lot, and I think that was the purpose of these movies for certain people that were writing them. And I do know who those people are, by the way. So those are interesting, and I did put those out very recently. So that's what has been done recently, and I hope that you can enjoy that stuff. So let's open with prayer. I do want you guys to know that I expect that you guys would pray for each other and pray for me each week during your week, not just on the live stream, but I hope that, you know, we are all in your head throughout the week, and that you pray to God for each of us. You know, we have some people on the live stream that I know of that have very difficult personal issues going on in their lives, relationships, sicknesses, people going through, you know, difficult disease like cancers and all sorts of stuff. So just like any group of people, we have things that we need help with, and we should be praying for one another throughout the week. So I just expect that you guys do that, and I would thank you for any prayers you've offered for myself. So let's bow wherever you are. Let's bow and let's pray real quick before we get started today. Thank you, Father, for this time where we can dig into things that we, in many cases, can't dig into anywhere else or talk with anyone else about. Sometimes that's the case. But Lord, we give the time to you. I pray that you would bring truth to our attention. Help us to find answers. Help us to grow closer to you in doing so. That's all we want to do, Lord. We want to know you better. And just give me strength and humbleness and clarity so that I can speak truth and I can help with the questions that have been asked. Lord, I give it all to you, and I do this all in the name of Jesus Christ, your Son. Amen. All right, guys, so time to get started. All right, we got a few other people that joined the chat, it looks like. I see GLN set apart as king. Good to have you this morning. Welcome to you. Oh, it's good to hear from you. Thank you for saying those things. Linda Connor, good morning to you. All right, let me see if there's anything else in the chat. No, I think we're caught up. Raina Waddell, you say you love the Godzilla videos. Good. Yeah, I did too. I loved making them because I was like, man, this is so apparent. The messaging in those movies is so apparent. It's just we're all expecting a monster movie, and so we go in with a total set of preconceptions. We don't see the messages being played out in front of our faces. And that seems to be what a lot of people are doing. Well, some of these kind of good guys in the industry are doing. So you have to ask yourself, who are those guys? And why are they putting these messages out? Seems to be important for this time that we're living in. All right. So let's see about these topics. Let me see if I want to reorder them at all before we get started here. Try to get going quick, but it's hard sometimes. There's a lot going on here. Okay, we've got the Geneva Bible. We've got Isaac and Ishmael from Stacia, Rick Bowser, the Angels and Principalities. All those are good. Let's see. Gog and Magog. I think I'm going to bump yours up to the top, Rick Bowser. I want to do the Angels and Principalities real quick. Laura Masood, you're about the judging cities. I think that deserves more, and I want to give it more. So I think I'm going to push it down so that we probably won't get to it today, but we'll talk. I'll do a video on it. I think that's what I want to do. So Sam Big, your questions, Gog and Magog, George Washington, a vision about the 3 great wars. Yeah, George Washington's vision. I'm gonna do that first, then Rick Bowser's. Let's see, Geneva Bible, Gog and Magog. Sam Biggs questions about that stuff is prophetic, so let's do that together. And I think this is a pretty good order of service today. Order of service. Okay. All right, so let's start with George Washington's vision. This is a great one. I love this. And I think you guys might love it too by the time we're done here. All right. So, here's the interesting thing about George Washington's vision. And me particularly. If you go to my channel, view my channel, Bible Scribe channel on YouTube, and you do a search, George Washington. Just search for George. Apparently their search is terrible. You'll see I have a video on George Washington's vision. I did it 3 years ago. So Sam Big, I really would recommend this if you're interested in that vision. There is nowhere you will find the research that I did on the internet at all, period. There's nowhere. Now, I'm not saying that lightly. Like there's some of my videos, many of my videos where I wouldn't say this, but this is one of the most well-researched and most amazing videos. So there's so much that I found here. There's so much that I found when I studied this, and it's a long video. It's an hour and 18 minutes, but to me it's so worth it. So you can see here that there's jump points. There's jump points for the vision itself. I have photos of Valley Forge we go through. We read the vision. Then we talk about the debunkers' arguments against it. Okay, there's people out there that debunk this vision. You know, most of the material you'll find online are flash in the pan reporters that don't do any research, and they try to debunk the vision, and they say, oh, there's nothing, this is nothing, it doesn't mean anything. Well, the reality is that in this video, I go through the actual historical records of the Anthony Sherman that was said to have given this vision to the writer that wrote it. I have all of his historical records. I went through Ancestry.com and got everything. I have letters that he wrote because he was trying to get payment after the Civil War for his involvement. They actually did payments after that to support the soldiers that were in the Civil War. I have the records of him writing about needing his payment, and it was all this different history that's there. It's ridiculous. His pension applications, that's what I'm trying to say, from 1835. I show those on the video. It's not hearsay. I find letters from his relatives. We deal with the dates, and then I show that I found Anthony Sherman in the Civil War, the guy who says he was with George Washington when he recounted the vision in the winter of, I don't know what year it is. And I prove that he literally was in George Washington's company during the winter when he says he received the vision. So I totally destroy all the debunking arguments against this vision. I don't know how anyone who watches this video could say anything other than it seems like a true vision, and it seems like this guy, Anthony Sherman, was in a position to hear about it from George Washington in his company, in his regimen, in I believe it was in Valley Forge is where he heard it from George Washington. I even show the records from the Civil War that show he was in the company of those people at that time. So all I can say is yes, as far as I'm concerned, George Washington's vision is true, that he did have this vision, or at least that Anthony Sherman seems to be a reliable witness to having heard it from George Washington himself. All of the things match up. I've never seen anywhere on the internet at all, ever, anybody that did this research and found what I found. So I'm just saying I feel really accomplished in having been able to do it. I feel good about this video. So Sam Big, in response to your question, this is the only place I know you're going to find this information on George Washington's vision. Now, there's that. So I don't know if we want to take time to read the vision or talk about it further. Maybe I can do that. Let's see if I can pull it up really quick. Oh, this is another good topic we're going to come to soon, is the scapegoat, the Azazel. I'm going to probably do another video on that soon anyway. Oh, where's the vision? Let's see. Maybe I'll just use the video where it goes through the vision. The vision, yeah. Okay. Because I'm not going to find my notes quickly. I'm just going to use the video here to do it. I'm trying to get to the part, because the vision, by the way, so what happens in the vision is George Washington is recounting this vision to his troops at Valley Forge. And he says an angel appeared to him in his study. And he says, I was paralyzed, I was frozen. All I could do was watch this angel. And the angel showed me this amazing vision of the Union. He calls it the Union, America. And he says that he gave 3 visions to him. The first was a major conflict, right? The second was a major conflict. The third was a major conflict, the final conflict of the Union. And so the third vision, of course, is what we're interested in. The first 2, and I'm not going to, I think the first conflict was the Civil War in the vision. And the second conflict shown was the World Wars, as far as I remember, I think I'm correct. And so that was in the future from, of course, when George Washington received that vision. So he received it in the middle of the Civil War. So the angel was telling him, the Union will survive this conflict. That's always, by the way, when people receive visions from angels or God, even in the Bible, that's always the way it is. The vision or the prophecy is to make them feel comfortable in the current situation because it looks bleak, right? But it also usually is to tell the future so that they are aware it will play out, it will be okay in the end. And that seems to be exactly what George Washington's vision was about. So he sees the first conflict as the Civil War that they are in the middle of. He sees a second conflict that they don't know what it is, but it actually ends up being the First and Second World Wars. That is seen in the vision as one conflict altogether. And then the third vision that he sees is another conflict, a final conflict of the Union, after which George Washington asked the angel, will the Union survive? Will the Union survive this? And the angel says, yes, the Union, meaning America, will survive until the end of time. And that's what George Washington was told. So you can see here, let's see if I'm in the right spot. I want to make sure before I think that's the second. Sorry guys, just want to make sure I don't want to start reading and waste our time here trying to make sure I'm at the right spot. Okay, so I think this is the third vision. And again I heard a mysterious voice saying, Son of the Republic, look and learn. At this, the dark, shadowy angel placed a trumpet to his mouth and blew 3 distinct blasts. And taking water from the ocean, he sprinkled it upon Europe, Asia, and Africa. Then my eyes beheld a fearful scene, for from each of these countries arose thick black clouds that were soon joined into one. Throughout this mass there gleamed a dark red light, by which I saw hordes of armed men who, moving with the cloud, marched by land and sailed by sea to America. Our country was enveloped in this volume of cloud, and I saw these vast armies devastate the whole country, burn the villages, towns, and cities that I beheld springing up. As my ears listened to the thundering of the cannon, clashing of the swords, shouts, and cries of millions in mortal combat, I heard again the mysterious voice saying, Son of the Republic, look and learn. When the voice had ceased, the dark, shadowy angel placed his trumpet once more to his mouth and blew a long, fearful blast. Instantly the light as of 1,000 suns shone down from above me and pierced and broke into fragments the dark cloud which enveloped America. At the same moment, the angel upon whose head still shone the word Union and bore our national flag in one hand and a sword in the other, descended from the heavens, attended by legions of white spirits. These immediately joined the inhabitants of America, who I perceived were well nigh overcome, but who immediately taking courage again, closed up their broken ranks and renewed the battle. Okay, I think that might have been, let's see. Ah, yes. Then for the last time, the shadowy angel dipped water from the ocean, sprinkled it upon America, and instantly the dark cloud rolled back together with the armies it had brought, leaving the inhabitants of the land victorious. So that's really the vision that was given. The angel ends up with this statement that you're going to see on your screen. I think you already saw it before. While the stars remain and the heavens send down dew upon the earth, so long shall the Union last. So that's what the angel told George Washington, apparently. But again, I go through so much evidence as to why this seems to be a legitimate vision and a legitimate recounting of George Washington's vision, that it's just really interesting. It was really interesting to me to find all of it. I was just so surprised I was able to find what I did. So I hope that that's helpful to you guys. I hope you can, if you're interested in that, you haven't seen that video, I guarantee it'll be interesting and that you'll see stuff that you can't find anywhere else because people don't want to do this work. I don't think people want to, the mainstream media doesn't want to find out that this is true and that we're going to be successful in the end and that good things will come back to this country. They don't want to report that. And so this is actually one of my more popular videos, has been out for a few years and has gotten a few thousand views. So I hope that helps and it's interesting to you guys. So I see some questions there, like C. Jones, you're asking a couple. Let me see here if I can help with some answers on those. Reno Waddell, you say the George Washington video is awesome. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not just because it's me, but because the information is awesome. It's just awesome. C. Jones, you say, do I mean that he received the vision during the Revolutionary War and not the Civil War? Am I saying it wrong? Am I saying it wrong? I think I'm saying it wrong. Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're, I can't remember, honestly. Yeah, I guess it would have been the Revolutionary War. Yeah, it would have been the Revolutionary War. Yeah, I'm saying it wrong or something. I don't know what my problem is, but it's in the video. It's been a long time since I did the video. But yeah, you got it. You got it. Yeah, Sam Big. I do believe it's probably true. I just as any recounting of a vision is, it could possibly have issues with the way it was related, but I mean, overall, it seems like the recounting is true, and that's a viable vision, and we should actually take note of it. I don't think we should like base everything we do on it, but we should take note of it. I think it's legitimate. All right, so let's move on to our next topic, guys. Man, what Google shows me from this live stream, it's like way delayed. I hope that you guys are seeing everything that on it, like without too much delay. I can't tell. This is very strange. What's going on? Anyway, Redmax 1977, you say, our visions or dreams from God exclusively given to believers? I that's a good question, Redmax. I don't know why we would say that, honestly. Why would we say that? That they're only given, that God only gives visions to believers. I'm not sure that that's the case. I don't know. I would challenge that notion, maybe. Yeah, B. Nichols says she had a vision before she was a believer, so I think that happens. Nebuchadnezzar, yeah, Sam likes fruit. You're correct. Good morning, by the way. Sam likes fruit. All right, let's move to the next topic then. I think this is going to be Rick Bowser's topic on the angels and the principalities of the nations. So let me put that up on the board here. And Rick, tell me if there's any specific thing you want me to go into on this topic other than just like kind of an overview of what I've seen and heard about it and found out based on my research, which I can definitely do that. All right. I'm looking for something real quick. Okay. All right. So yeah, the angel principalities. So I'm gonna briefly go over the whole concept, start to finish, and you tell me if there's anything else you want to hear after we do this. So there's this concept in the Bible and many ancient writings about the essentially the princes. They're called princes in many of the texts, and in a lot of the prophecies, they're called princes. The word behind that is malak or melech, and it's ruler. And we even see that as the name for angels in the text. And I went into that in the video I did this week on Michael the archangel, because the word it uses is melech, and it's the same word really, always used for angels and these principality rulers of the nations. So what you have is, and it happened after the Tower of Babel, when God distributed the people of the earth. He broke them all up because the Tower of Babel was a huge affront to God. They literally wanted to reach heaven with the intent, and you may think that's crazy, but that was literally the intent, to find a way to break into heaven and carry out vengeance on God, because they were pagan at the time. And you can read this in the book of, I believe it's Jasher, is where a very interesting account of the Tower of Babel is. I do a whole video on the real story. It's called The Real Story of the Tower of Babel. has a lot of this information about the Tower of Babel and why it happened, but I'm just saying that was this huge affront to God. It was probably a bigger event than most of us give credit for, because in the Bible it's just a few verses. But when God scattered the peoples, there was a few things that happened. And I'm going to share on your screen real quick. This is Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8. And this is a very interesting verse. And, you know, it's not going to seem, most people when they read this verse, they have no idea what it's talking about. But it says, when the Most High, of course, God the Father, divided the nations, and that would have been at the Tower of Babel, after the tower was destroyed by God, and he separated all the people and divided their languages and put them in, you know, essentially spread them over the earth. That's when he divided the nations, their inheritance. He separated the sons of Adam, all the humans. He set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. So on first read, in most translations, this seems a little weird, but why would he set the bounds of the people of the nations according to the number of the children of Israel? And the reality is that Israel, if I'm not mistaken, didn't exist when he divided the nations. All right? So there's some problems there with this translation. So what we do is we go into the Hebrew and we look at this verse, and you see here that where it said in the English translation, it does this in many English translations. It says that it divided the bound, or set the boundaries of the peoples according to, it's not big enough for you guys. Set the boundaries of the people according to the number of, in the English it said the sons of Israel, the children of Israel. Well, we see here in the Hebrew it says the B'nai Israel. But that's, let's see, where, that's confusing to me, because that's not, this says Israel. I'm confused now, because I thought this was where it's the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God. That's confusing to me. I am wondering now if I have the right version of the Hebrew here. But you will see, by the way, in many translations of this verse. So let me do that. Let me just go to this verse. Let's see if I can get there easily. You'll see in other translations, he established the boundaries of the people according to the number in his heavenly court. That's the New Living. The English Standard says according to the number of the sons of God. So does the Berean Standard. The King James says the children of Israel. Okay. The New American Standard says sons of Israel. So you'll see that the differences, and that there's a reason for that. I believe the reason comes into play because they're using different manuscripts in the Hebrew. So what we can do is we'll do this. I didn't mean to have this much trouble. It surprised me a little bit. I didn't remember that this is how this was, so I'm having to go a little deeper than I wanted to. But if we go to the Septuagint, we go to Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. You see this? Let's see if you can see that. When the Most High divided the nations, he separated the sons of Adam and set the bounds of the nations according to the number of the angels of God. Okay, so there it is. That's what we come to, is apparently the Masoretic text was changed. That's what my guesstimation is. And so we see in the Masoretic Hebrew that it says the B'nai Israel, but in the oldest texts, it seems that it says the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, or the sons of El. And so what we see here, and what is projected in many texts, and so this is not the only place, but it sounds like God, when he apportioned the people after Babel, he spread them out, but he also assigned angel principalities over them. according to the number of the angels of God. So you go over there and you shepherd those people, you shepherd those people, he said to his angels, right? And so then what we see in many different places, we see him talking about this. For instance, if you go to the book of Enoch, it talks about this shepherding angel idea. There's a prophecy called, I call it the prophecy of the bulls and the sheep, okay? And it's further on in Enoch. It's not in the beginning part where it's talking about the angels and stuff. It's further on in the prophecy section of the book of Enoch. And it talks all about, it's essentially giving you the history of the Israelite nation, okay? But it has this passage in it, this part that talks about the shepherds. There's shepherds. So there's all these different symbolic creatures. There's bulls and sheep and rams and I think wolves. And they all represent different nations struggling against the nation of Israel. And essentially, it shows the history of the nation. Well, it has this section called the shepherds, where the shepherds are wicked. It says the shepherds are not tending the sheep. And God says that I'm going to essentially judge the shepherds. And he has his scribe, which I think is Enoch, take down all of the deeds of the shepherds and say, in the end, I will judge the shepherds for their wickedness against my people, the sheep, essentially, which is Israel in the prophecy. So there's all of this context in that writing and in the prophets. So by the way, when you look through all the prophets in the Old Testament, what do you see? You see, is it Jeremiah or Isaiah or one of the prophets saying, oh, king of Tyre. What is that? The Melech of Tyre. And then he pronounces all the judgments on that, quote, king. We think of the word king, we think of a human ruler. But the reality is that that word Melech is not necessarily a human ruler. We see it used for angels, we see it used for other things. And so what we find out when we put all of these pieces together is that, yes, the Masoretic texts have been corrupted, and there's a very clear picture that angels were set as principalities over all of the nations, each of the nations. As I talked about in the video on Michael the Archangel, he was the patron principality over the nation of Israel in the Old Testament. At least that's what it sounds like from the book of Daniel. It says he protected them, he fought for them, he fought against other princes. It says he fought against the prince in Persia and the other princes in Persia. So there's all this talk, and it doesn't make any sense if we try to make all those humans. Michael was not a human. It says that in the text. So there's all these different things that when you put it together, it paints a very clear picture that when we see the Old Testament saying, I am coming against Mizraim. Okay, Mizraim, by the way, there's no root for that word, and it is the word that we translate to Egypt. But it apparently is the name, the literal name of one of these angel principalities, the one that was over Egypt, a demon, if you will, because I think it was an evil one. So Mizraim is a Hebrew word that they have no basis for. They don't know where the word comes from. It apparently refers to this principality. You got Tyre, you've got Lucifer, which I believe is also one of these principalities. It is not Satan himself. It was a being of light, probably an angel, a seraphim. Tyre, Sidon, Edom. You got all these different judgments in the Old Testament against, it sounds like it's against the nation, but it's against the principality of the nation. He's calling them by name. And all these judgments, you know, they came against these nations, but they were, you got to look at the authority structure God has in place. It was against the nation's principality and the nation. Okay, the principality first. And so that's why in the New Testament now, we see in the book of Revelation that Christ in chapter 19 of Revelation is going to war against the kings of earth. Who are the kings of earth? And who did he war against? Did he war against literal human kings, or did he war against the principalities of all the nations? It sounds like, because that's a very spiritual section of Scripture, Christ's coming in the clouds, the dead saints are with him, the hosts of angels are with him. they're bringing all of the nations into the valley of decision to judge them. Okay, all those things are things that were happening in tandem with 70 AD, but we have no human reference for those things. Those are the nations, the principalities, being judged by Christ himself in the valley of Megiddo in the time frame of 70 AD. So the nation principalities concept, you can look at Michael Heiser. He talks about he talks about this in spades, right? He talks first about the divine council. He's got all that information, which I think is somewhat good. I think there's some issues there too, but he also talks about the principalities of the nations, just maybe not to the extent that we're talking about. So it's not a foreign concept. It's a very consistent concept that runs throughout the Bible, things like the book of Enoch. There are other writings that talk about going into heaven and they see some of these principalities, these high-level angels. There's the Dead Sea Scrolls that often talk about these same, quote, nations that are going to be judged. And so, all of that together paints a very clear picture of these principalities. So I hope that even though I stuttered a little on that first verse, because again, you have different versions even of the Hebrew we have to wrestle with sometimes. And I apologize for that. But you saw in the Septuagint how clear it is. It says literally, according to the angels of God, he separated the nations. An angel goes with this one, an angel goes with that one. That's you're the shepherd over that nation, you're the shepherd over that nation. And then we hear in that prophecy where God's saying, I have distributed my people, my sheep to you. And he's talking about the Israelites when they were displaced from Jerusalem, right? And sent to Babylon. And he says to those shepherds, you have dealt with my people wickedly. Okay? And that's why this judgment had to come upon those shepherds. In fact, by the way, when we talk about 70 AD and the judgment that occurred, in my mind, now I don't know if I communicate this well enough, but based on what I've read and researched on this topic, in my mind, half of the judgment had to do with Israel and the whole other half of it had to do with the nation principalities. That was part of God putting under Christ the authority of all those nations. That's what it means when it's talking about that Christ would rule the nations with the rod of iron. He's ruling over those principalities. Now, there's still outliers, there's still wickedness going on, but in the end, it says in 1 Corinthians 15, he would put all authority under his feet. So that's what's still playing out in some degree, although I think most of it has been accomplished at this point. So, I said a lot of words, but I hope that makes sense. I hope that kind of helps you with the overview. But by the way, I just want to reiterate that 70 AD and the judgments and things that happened in the book of Revelation, to me, that's like a major portion of what happened in the first century, is the judgment of the nations and the valley of Megiddo. There was a court. God, with Christ as the judge, held a court in Megiddo with all the nation principalities, and he judged them as lacking, and he took vengeance on them for the wickedness they showed to his people Israel. It's a huge part of the fulfillments of the prophecies in the Old Testament. And when you come with that perspective to the prophets in the Old Testament, it's like, all of this makes sense now. All of it makes sense. I understand now. But telling people that sometimes is really hard. It's hard to get that across. When you're talking about the king of Tyre in Jeremiah or whatever, and you're trying to tell them, well, that's actually an angel he's talking to. He's not necessarily talking to the people of the city or the king, the little human king in the chair. He's talking to the principality of that nation, and the judgment will come against that principality. So in reference to all this, Laura Masood, your question about are cities judged? That to me plays into this discussion, because I think that what you're seeing when God, quote, judges a city, when he judged Sodom and Gomorrah, was he judging just the people, or was he also judging the shepherd of that nation, the principality in charge of that city? And of course, by the way, for any of you who are interested in Sodom and Gomorrah, there's been a lot of study done to say that the Dead Sea and the salt mounds surrounding the Dead Sea, the reason it is salt is because that was the location, the original location of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that it's possible that the Dead Sea only exists because of the destruction that God brought on Sodom and Gomorrah. And so there's a lot of evidence. I've seen people go through and they do testing on the rocks around there. But that is the location where Sodom and Gomorrah was. So if you can imagine God turning that city into a salt ocean, that's literally what God did. Anyway, I digress. So I hope that helps. Let me see what you guys are talking about in the chat. I've probably gone way off the rails here. Let's see what you guys are saying. Stacia, it's a good comment. You mentioned Molech or Molech. Excuse me. This is a difficult thing that I wish I knew better. But the words Molech and Molech, I believe, may have the same spelling in ancient Hebrew. So when we hear Molech, we may actually be hearing them talk about some angel principality, right? Another evil one, obviously. So I would have to do a etymological study on Molech to see if that matched the word Melech and exact spelling, or if there was differences that could be seen. So I don't know the answer as to whether they were exactly the same word, but it could be related. Definitely sounds etymologically related. Yes, C. Jones, you mentioned the Septuagint, and we found that. I apologize for that. But yeah, some translations do use the Septuagint as a basis or a voice of help during their translation process. Others stick to the Masoretic, which, just to remind everyone, the Masoretic didn't come along till the 900s AD. All right. Just going down through your comments, guys, to make sure that I don't miss anything here. C. Jones, you ask if that's what we see in the ancient Sumerian texts, where they believe that there is a Most High God with 70 sons, and it was those sons he assigned to oversee the nation. Yeah, there's more detail there. And C. Jones, I think even in the Bible, there might be a reference to the 70, or at least in some writing that I've read. And so, yeah, there's probably more references to that. I wish I could have been more exhaustive. It's hard to pull all the information together at the same time. I think you're right, though. That yes, the other texts, Sumerian, Akkadian, Phoenician, those things they found, and you notice that they talk about the kings. There's a kings list in the Sumerian that they always talk about. And they talk about the dating of those kings, and I think it's all bogus, or misrepresented. I'll put it that way. But those pagan nations, they all worshipped these principalities. They worshipped their patron angel instead of worshiping God. And of course, that's the problem, right? So when they worshipped their God, they would write their histories, their texts, their holy sacred writings to present their God as the best God, right? Every single pagan nation would do that. So that's why we see all of that happening in, for instance, the Sumerian texts. But you have to realize it is a snapshot from their perspective, a pagan perspective, of the principalities of the nations that God set up. So yeah, I think it's I think the point is perfect. You're right, C. Jones, and we need to be aware of that when we see people claiming, oh, the Nag Hammadi texts say this. Well, or whatever. Maybe Nag Hammadi is the wrong one. Those are the Gnostic texts, but they may actually represent it as well. But the pagan nations represented their patron shepherd angel as their God and the God, the best God. Sometimes they would take multiple ones, and you have multiple gods. And I think I did a video on that not too long ago. It was close to when I was doing the Babylon stuff. I'm not sure. I can't remember what I called that video, honestly. What did I call that video? Oh, well, I won't go to it. I think I have a few videos that if you search for Principalities, you'll find them. But I did a few on this topic. But I think actually today, some of the things we talked about bring it together in a little better way than I did in some of those videos. So anyway, maybe it's worth revisiting at some point. C. Jones, yeah, when Christ puts all enemies under his feet, 1 Corinthians 15, is that Christ taking back authority from these principalities and returning it to the Father? I feel like, C. Jones, the more I've read that passage in 1 Corinthians 15, is that that's what it says is ongoing. Like, God gave Christ the authority when the kingdom was set up, but putting that under his feet and bringing them to their knees, to me, sounds like an ongoing thing that will be happening in that passage and is in the future of that passage. So that's just my feelings on that passage itself. Kelsey, you ask, is that when Pangea split then? Or maybe started splitting with Babylon, then split more during Armageddon and mud floods? Kelsey, that's a good question. I don't know that I personally have believed that Pangea was true, that the continents split at some time in the past and separated out. Based on more of a, because we have maps, right? We have old ancient maps of the known world at the time, and they seem to match pretty closely with what we have now from the time of Christ, right? So, and before. We have, let me pull one up. I don't want to just say. Let me pull one of these maps up so you can see it real quick. But yeah, like, okay, Ptolemy. Some of these maps are bogus. Like, I realized as time goes on, like, I studied these maps a lot. Like, you can see, oh, you can't see because I'm not showing. These, I have tons of old ancient maps, and I have them by timeline. So let me see if I can, let me see this here. So when we come to like 1000 BC and we have this map that's supposedly the world according to Homer. Now this was, as far as I understand, this is not a map that Homer drew. He didn't draw this map and then we found it. You can see here that there's words that, you know, this is in Oceanus Fluvius. I believe that is Latin. So Homer didn't write this, right? This is something that someone created based on the works of Homer long after Homer was dead and gone. So probably even past the time of Christ. But this is supposedly a representation of what Homer described in his writings. So if this is true, you see the Mediterranean Sea here. Everything looks normal. There's nothing majorly different here than our modern world. That's a map that's unintelligible to us. Babylonian map, they say, if they even know. Here's Hecataeus, map of the world according to, 500 BC. Again, you can see this is a redo. It's a remake of a map based on what he said, I think. I don't believe there's any actual record of a map that Hecataeus drew in 500 BC. We rebuilt the map based on what he said. And, you can see what it looks like. Of course, the circular outliers here that's based on the limits of what he knew. He didn't. So, but you can see it all looks the same. There's not a lot of difference here either. And we can go, that's a different version of his map, same. Herodotus in 450 BC, this is a conception of what he said. And again, it gets fuzzy around the edges because that's the limits of what he knew about. He didn't actually describe much of this. But again, what we see here from this area of the world, the Middle East, looks the same as what we have now. That's 500 years before Christ. So the descriptions we have of the time before Christ seems very similar to what we have after the time of Christ. So to say that Pangea occurred, well, I guess Pangea, that if it matched the Tower of Babel, that would have been before all of that. So I guess to suffice it to say that I can't answer the question really well, but the oldest maps we have seem to match what we know. And I guess I've just always been skeptical of the whole idea of Pangea. But okay, let's put it this way though. Wouldn't the flood have caused some of what we see now in the world? Wouldn't the flood have been probably more of a catalyst for the changes that might have occurred between the original format of the land and what we have now? To me, that's more of what we should look at, is the flood. The flood was the global catastrophe that we can prove from ancient writings and from archaeology and from, of course, geology. It seems to be proven in every sense every time we do any digging anywhere. And so to me, the flood is the thing we should study and not worry about some theoretical Pangea that the secular scientists try to push on us. Anyway, so, well, those maps didn't help a ton, but maybe that gives you some context. I don't know. At least back to before Christ, everything was the same. I don't know about, at the time of Babel. That's pretty long ago. But if it was the flood that caused what we're talking about, then that, of course, was before Babel. And so by the time of Babel and the separation of the nations, that would have already occurred. If that's the case, I mean, this is all speculation, but just to throw it out. All right. C. Jones, you say, you wonder if this is where Gnostics got their belief that Yahweh was one of the sons of God, a God of war, and Israel worshipped him instead of the Father. Yeah, I believe that's true, probably, C. Jones. I mean, that's right. If you look at it from the perspective of the pagans, they would have thought that Jehovah God was just another one of these principalities and ours is better, right? And of course, the Gnostics believe essentially that Lucifer is equivalent with Jehovah. And but they also invert it. They say, well, Lucifer's the good one and Jehovah's the bad one, right? So it's exactly what you're saying. It's exactly right. So good morning, Janice A. It's good to have you this morning. All right. I think that's pretty good. Oh, Rick Bowser, you say, this is your topic. I want to make sure I answer your questions. You said, it's amazing to think of the angels as flawed. Is it just me? No, I mean, why wouldn't an angel be flawed? We have records in many writings of Satan falling because he got prideful and he decided, he had the free will to decide, I'm going to go against God the Father. I'm going to take my angels and we're going to rebel against you, and God threw them out of heaven. So I feel like any angel can make that decision. I don't see any reason why angels would not have the free will that men have. And in fact, that's a case I make against the Calvinist positions that deny free will, because angels have free will. So why wouldn't God have created man with the same type of free will that angels have? If God is sovereign, as the Calvinists suppose, and he essentially pushes, guides every human in the direction he should go, and the human has no choice but to accept God's effectual leading, then why wouldn't God do the same thing with angels? It's another good argument that the Calvinists have no response for whatsoever. All right. Let's go on to the next topic. I think we're there. I think we got there. That was a good one, Rick Bowser. I appreciate that. I really do. Houndjog, you asked about the Geneva Bible. So let's do the Geneva Bible of 1560. Now, I think, let's see, you put a comment in there in addition to your original one, and put anything else you want to think about in relation to the Geneva Bible. If you can, if YouTube will let you. By the way, guys, thanks for using that reaction emote thing. I like that thing. I like seeing your emojis pop up. That's kind of fun. I appreciate that, by the way. Let's see. Trying to find your comment, Hound Jog. You said something else about Geneva. Did it go away? Did they delete it? I can't win for losing. No, you said here. Okay, I see it now. You said it here in this spot. And I just scrolled past it. Now I can't see it. Oh, there we go. Right here, you say, perhaps I've been misled on the Geneva Bible. Read, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the government. Is it that verse you want to look at, Hound Jog? That's what I want to know. Is it the verse that you're interested in, or is it the whole thing? I just want to make sure I don't waste a bunch of time talking about something you're not intending to. Adagial, by the way, good morning to you. You say the KJV is missing 1380 years of genealogy in Genesis compared to the Septuagint. That's true, Adagial. Yes. Okay, Hound Jog, you say yes, the verse. Okay, I think you mean the verse. So let's see if we can study that. Okay, let me think about this a second. Let me think about this. Geneva Bible and the verse about principalities. We're struggling against dominions and all that stuff. Okay, let's see. Let me find that. Dominions. Ooh, there's a lot of results. Dominion. Is it? Let's see. Well, we do have this verse. This is interesting. Colossians 1:16. I'm going to pop that open real quick too. Let's see. Close tabs to the right. Colossians 1:16. For by him were all things created in heaven that are in earth, visible, invisible, whether they're thrones, dominions, principalities, powers. I wonder if that in the Geneva is different. But that's not the verse you asked about. You're asking about the one that says, for we wrestle not. Let me do this. Wrestle not. There we go. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness of the world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So let's look that up in the Geneva, see what we get. Geneva Bible. Is that on BibleHub.com? Because that's where I like to be. I like my Bible Hub. It's such a good reference source. Let's see. Geneva should be here, shouldn't it? Geneva Study Bible? Maybe. Oh, that's going to be really wordy. That's a study Bible, not just actually the Geneva. Okay, that's not going to work. I got to go somewhere else for it. Let's see. The Geneva Bible, 1599. You said it was earlier. You said the Geneva 1560. Let me see if I can find that one online to use. Geneva Bible 1560.com. Interesting. I don't know much about this. This is very interesting. The Geneva Bible from 1560. And we're going to go to Ephesians 6. Wow, this is amazing. Okay, I'm glad you brought this up because I'm learning something here. Ephesians 6. Let's see what it says about this verse. Ephesians 6:12. Here's the verse. Hope you guys can see it there. There we go. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and against the worldly governors, the princes of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness which are in high places. So, I mean, I think you asked something, Hound Jog, about government. I don't know, because the context in this passage, even in the Geneva, in verse 11, it's putting on the whole armor of God to stand against the assaults of the devil, who is a spirit. And it says we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And then it says all these things: principalities, powers, worldly governors, princes of darkness of this world. Everything there, maybe except for the worldly governors, sounds like spiritual entities to me. So in the context, I'm just saying it's hard to say that this is not part of this list of against flesh and blood, meaning not flesh and blood entities, and that instead, in this one instance, is saying against worldly governments. Okay, which is, I think, what you were saying in your question there. So this particular verse to me still should, I think, in my opinion, based on the context, this is still referring to spiritual powers in all these cases, in this whole verse. And it says, for this cause you take up the whole armor of God, that you can resist in the evil day, and having finished all things, stand fast. And pray always with all manner of prayer and supplication in the Spirit. Watch thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for the saints. And for me, the utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to publish the secrets of the gospel. So, to me, again, that does sound spiritual. I hope that helps. I don't feel like it's saying to stand up against your government, meaning your human government, but I hope am I answering what you're talking about? Are we talking about what you were intending? Karen Morgan, good morning to you. It's good to have you. Thank you so much. You say you'd like to add that you have the Apocrypha in KJV and NKV. Any other favorites looking to collect for Bible versions? Thanks. I would say my only other one, Karen, is that I do like the New American Standard just because its translation is very literal. So it helps sometimes in translating certain passages if you don't want to use the Greek helps or the Hebrew helps. But other than that, I like to use KJV and then use the Greek and Hebrew helps. I usually don't use the New American Standard anymore. But again, if you want a more literal translation, that's a pretty good one. All right. Janice A., you say, worldly governors, are they possessed? I would say sometimes, maybe. Some of ours are probably possessed. I would say that. Yeah. All right. Hound Jog, by the way, thank you for bringing the Geneva 1560 to my attention. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to use this for my study now because I want to know what this version has that's different than other versions and see how that works. Just for curiosity, I am going to also go to Colossians 1:16 real quick and see what this version says about it. Colossians 1:16, that's right here. For by him all things are created which are in heaven and which are in earth, things visible, invisible, whether they are thrones, dominions, principalities, or powers. All things were created by him and for him. To me, too, all these things, by the way, thrones, dominions, principalities, and powers, I can probably, if I could do it in my head right now, but I'm not going to name the sources correctly. But all of these things are mentioned in other writings that I've read as spiritual beings. especially in the writings that have people like Abraham, the apocalypse of Abraham, the ascension of Isaiah, the different writings that show someone going to heaven, they talk about seeing these things. They see them on the different levels of heaven. On this level, it's the powers. And on this level, they see the dominions. And then this level, it's the thrones. They see these things in heaven. So I do know these are spiritual things by that. All right. All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Thank you, Hound Jog, for that topic. I'm going to go on now to Statia's topic. Isaac and Ishmael were given promises, but we know Isaac's, but what was Ishmael's? Isaac and Ishmael's promises. Let's do that. Whoa. There's my titler. There we go. Isaac and Ishmael's promises. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that exact thing and I'm going to search for that because I won't remember off the top of my head, of course, where that is. So let me do that real quick. So let's see. The first result is from chabad.org. Let's see if should we trust the Jewish source or should we go a little further? Christian website. Why did God choose Isaac over Ishmael? And then Isaac and Ishmael, spirit and flesh. Let's open those two. I want to just see this. Genesis 21. Okay. So here's a Christian source. I don't trust the source necessarily either, but over the Jewish source, maybe. I might go to the Jewish later for some clarity. But why did God choose Isaac over Ishmael? This says because Isaac was the son promised to Abraham. And let's see. What we are interested in, though, is the promises to Ishmael and Isaac, not... Now let me see to... Stacia, to your second question, is it possible that the current Muslims are from Ishmael's lineage? I don't know that for sure. I really don't know that for sure because there's a lot of interesting evidence out there that says that the Muslim nations were a creation of the Catholic Church. There to me is a lot more I need to study to understand this topic better. I'm not saying that's true either, but I'm saying there needs to be a lot more looked at here. You have, before the Muslims and Muhammad, you have the Saracens and the Turks and all these different groups that they came from. I would really have to do more study to know and be able to speak more intelligently on that. So I'm not going to probably try to link Ishmael and the Muslims today. Maybe I'll take that as a topic for an extra video if I can do some research on that. But let's see if we can find what the promises were for Isaac. Let's see. Genesis 21. Let me just go to Genesis 21. Yeah, you're right, Stacia. It is convoluted. It is hard to know what's going on sometimes, but we're doing our best. We're doing our best. Okay. So here's the story of Isaac and Ishmael and all this. The Lord visited Sarah, as he said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he spoke. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age. And the name of that son was Isaac. And Abraham circumcised Isaac, being 8 days old. Oh, I got a good video coming on the 8th day, guys. I really do. And Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had born unto Abraham, mocking. So that would be Ishmael. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman for her son, for the son of this bondwoman will not be heir with my son, even Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. So, just to me, I did run across this in my studies this week, and it was interesting to me to think back on this and go through it again and just think about the fact that God had intended for Isaac to be born. And that's why everything through Isaac and his lineage was the lineage essentially of the Savior. But he had not intended for Ishmael to be born. Abraham went outside the work of God to have Ishmael, and Sarah also. And they, had him go to Hagar, and they had the son Ishmael. So this Egyptian is the one that had Ishmael. So, by the way, that's interesting too. It's a crossbreed between the Israelites, Abraham, and Hagar, the Egyptian. So Ishmael was half Egyptian and half Israelite. So he casts them out, sends them away, and then let's see. Yeah, Hagar goes out into the wilderness of Beersheba with the baby Ishmael, and they run out of water, and they're sitting there thinking they're going to die, and the angel comes, and the voice of God was heard, and says, fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. And arise, lift up the lad, hold him in their hand, for I will make him a great nation. God opened her eyes and gave the lad a drink. And God was with the lad. He grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. And dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. His mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So again, that's the limits of my knowledge, but I really like this story, and I do want to search it more. I'm going to put that on my notes as a takeaway here. So Stacia, that question about the Muslims, I want to know more about that too, and so I'm going to take that as a goal this week, is to try to do more research and come up with a small, maybe long video on that, if I can find out some good information. So let's go and see if I can really find the promises. And is that Abraham promising to Isaac? Or let's see, God's promises to Isaac. Well, we did see, by the way, in this passage that God promised that he would make this lad, Ishmael, a great nation. He was an archer, was in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So he married an Egyptian. So he was half Egyptian, married an Egyptian. So the people became more and more Egyptian, essentially. If that was the start of this nation that God was going to make out of them, they were mostly Egyptian in genetics. Adagio, you say, Ishmael received not a covenant, but a great nation. Yeah, that seems to be what we're seeing. And then you say 12 great nations Ishmael bore. See, that's where I would have to know more. Was that in the Bible too? Is that in the Bible too? I just don't know. Ishmael. Yeah, it's all in Genesis 16, 17. Ishmael and Isaac buried Abraham together in the cave of Machpelah, the field of Ephron, the Zohar, the Hittite, which is before Mamre. So the cave of Mamre, where Abraham was buried, he was buried there by Ishmael and Isaac. Here's the generations of Ishmael in chapter 25. The names of the sons of Ishmael. So the names of the sons of Ishmael, that might give us a hint of where these peoples went. Nebajoth, Kedar, Abdeel, Mizbam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Haidar, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, Kedema. Well, off the top of my head, that doesn't ring a bell with any of the essentially Muslim nations or the peoples. So I, again, will have to do some more research on that to find more. It says they, meaning his people, dwelt from Havilah to Shur, that is before Egypt. So, and it goes towards Assyria. So if we do Bible map Havilah, I'm sure we'll get some results here. So do you see on this map, it's not very big for you guys. Let me make that bigger. Towards the bottom there, it says Havilah is the southern part of Egypt, down near where the tip of Saudi Arabia almost, cuts off the Red Sea there. So at the bottom of the Red Sea, that's Havilah. So apparently they took residence initially in the area of Egypt, if this is true, if this is correct, which it probably is. The references on this map, by the way, that's the Midrash, I believe. So that's what the Jewish tradition was, that they settled in that area. Anyway, I think that's enough. I'm going to take that topic now, Stacia. I'm going to study it more because I want to know more. Ed Davis, welcome this morning. It's good to have you. You say Genesis 17:20. Let's look at that real quick. Genesis 17, verse 20. As for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I blessed him, make him fruitful, and multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. That's exactly what we were looking for, yeah. So it sounds like that was the promise that he got, was simply about making him a great nation. Apparently, he would multiply him into 12. Was that list of his sons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 sons. So that's the sons that fathered the nations, apparently. So this is interesting. There's more for me to study here. So Genesis 25:12. I got to put this in my notes so I don't forget when I go to study it. Genesis 25:12 and Genesis 17:20. Perfect. Yeah, I'll do more, Stacia. I want to know this myself, so it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I try not to make promises I can't keep, but I think I'll do that this week. All right, so let's move on to our next topic. Sam Big, you asked about Gog and Magog. And you said that the gathering of the Gog and Magog armies, like the sand of the sea, was of interest to you. Oh, I can't spell, but there we go. So Gog and Magog, and we have to be honest with ourselves that it's not in the Bible a whole lot. So if we look up Magog, we get 5 results. Genesis, where the Magog is a son of Japheth. And so that gives us a hint here. And by the way, Gog is in Ezekiel 38:2 here, the land of Magog. So when we say the battle of Gog and Magog, it's Magog is the people and Gog is the land. So it's really one thing. And then if we look on, again, biblical maps, we can do the same thing we did before. Map, Magog. And actually, Magog is on all sorts of maps, not only in the ancient world, but in more modern times, like the time of Christ, and in the first few centuries, the Middle Ages. We have maps that have Magog written on them all throughout history. And what we see is that this area north of Palestine is what is considered Magog in most cases. So if I had to, if I had to circle it, I would circle it like Magog, all of this area in the north. Some people even consider it to be part of Siberia and Russia. All of that is part of the, quote, Magog or Gog area. By the way I interpret it is that Gog is the place and Magog is probably the principality of that place. Just food for thought there. Although Magog is also the name of a son of Japheth, and it makes sense. It all fits together. But that being said, as far as the armies of Magog, like the sands of the sea, that's in Revelation 20. We'll go straight there. verse 8, and shall go out to deceive the nations. This is after the 1,000 years is expired. Satan is loosed out of his prison. And we don't know whether this happens right after Satan comes out or if it happens way later. And we don't really know that about any of the things in this chapter, by the way. We don't know that for sure. The chronology is not given, right? We don't know whether it's and right after that, or if it's and many thousands of years later, or 1,000 years later, or 10 years later. We have no idea. And so we can't make a determination just based on the text that, oh, Gog and Magog is going to happen right after Satan's loosed, or if it's going to happen right before, the Great White Throne in chapter 11, or verse 11. So when these things are just listed out, and we're literally going through thousands of years of prophecy, there's no way for us to know, like, when does that happen? When does that happen? When does it? We don't know. It's just a sequence. So there could be time involved here. So what I did in my old video, which is like 2-3 years old now, on Gog and Magog, which was interesting, and that's why I've left that video up. But the conclusions were not there. I don't know when the battle was going to happen. But what we see in history is we do see about 1,000 years after 70 AD. The year is 1096 when the first crusade occurs. And the armies of the Turks, the Muslims, come up against Jerusalem. They take over Jerusalem and capture it. That's, I mean, if the camp of the saints in verse 9 here is Jerusalem, the beloved city, then we have a good indication that right after the 1,000 years expires, Satan is released, then the armies of the Turks start coming into the Holy Land. Okay, it's very well documented in history. So if all those timelines are correct and it all matches the way we think it might, that's a pretty compelling argument that the first crusade had to do with Gog and Magog. Okay, because those Turks were from the northern lands, all these different. So it's just interesting, and that's what I went through in that video, trying to figure out, was that the battle of Gog and Magog? There's even a couple instances where we have a little bit of reference, and it's small because there's not a lot of history recorded on that time period. But there was a reference where they said that there were meteors falling from heavens, fire coming down from heaven at that time in that area. And that it actually did kill some of the soldiers. So I don't know what to say to that other than that exists. That testimony exists. So that's a very interesting thing. So when we hear the sands of the sea, you asked about Sam Big. Now, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think this might be used multiple times in the Bible. 11 results for sand of the sea. Genesis 32:12. As thou said, surely I will do good to thee and make you your seed as the sands of the sea, which cannot be numbered. That's Abraham's promise from God. Joseph gathered corn in Genesis 41 as the sand of the sea, like a lot of corn. It's not, I mean, how much is it? We don't know. It's like the sand of the sea. It's a lot. You don't want to count it, right? So just understanding this statement of the sand of the sea as a measurement, we have to just realize that it's not an accurate measurement. We don't know what it means exactly. It just means a lot, like more than you'd want to count at any one time, right? In Isaiah 10, verse 22, he says, though thy people Israel are as the sand of the sea. But we know that from that time period, that the numbers of the Israelites were probably in the hundreds of thousands range, maybe the millions, maybe low millions. So that gives us an idea in that case of what sands of the sea meant a lot, maybe 1 million or so, 2 million, 3 million, I don't know. Then in Jeremiah, it's talking about the widows are increased above the sands of the sea. And so, that seems to be a much smaller number, but there's a lot of widows because of whatever, in Jeremiah. So we just need to realize that this is interesting. Again, Hosea says in chapter 1 that the number of the children will be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. Again, that seems to be the meaning of this phrase. So, how many is it? We don't know, and it doesn't mean it has to be 1,000,000. It could be 20,000, but that still is a lot. Like if you saw 20,000 soldiers coming at you, you might say that's like the sand of the sea. It's scary. There's a lot of them. So I just want to make that point that this cannot be measured in Revelation chapter 20. The statement, the sand of the sea, for the armies of Gog and Magog. For instance, the first crusade against the Turks, that would have qualified as a sand of the sea number of Turks invading the Holy Land. So, again, as I've always stated, my jury is still out on the Battle of Gog and Magog, but I will say that all that study I did to find out about the First Crusade was pretty impressive and amazing, and in a lot of ways seemed to match what this prophecy might be talking about. But it's not enough for me to say definitively that yes, that was the Battle of Gog and Magog, and it occurred very shortly after Satan was loosed, and there won't be another one. I don't know for sure. I could be totally wrong about that, and it could be in our future, before the Great White Throne judgment and the end of the world. So, my jury is out. I don't know for sure. I'm waiting to see, just like the rest of us. So I know that doesn't help much, Sam, but I hope it helps a little. All right. Set apart as king, you ask if I completed a second son doctrine study. I don't think so. So I'll put it in my notes to look at that. But I'm not sure what that means necessarily. Adagial, you say the only time with that number of mounted horsemen must be the Mongol horde's rewriting of history. Interesting. Well, again, the number really can't be measured, so I mean, it's just a lot. It just means a lot. So I don't know if that can be pinpointed to the Mongol hordes. Although the Mongol hordes, by the way, coming in, is that the ones that... I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things that we hear about with the barbarians invading Rome and the fall of Rome in the next few hundred years after Christ from Europe and the northern lands. There's a lot of that too that's very interesting. It has nothing to do with the Battle of Gog and Magog, but again, I just am mentioning that it's very interesting because it seems to have to do with the judgments that God pronounced against Rome because of the wickedness of the Babylonian gods being imported into Rome and worshipped in Rome and in Pompeii and in their centers of leadership there. Anyway, sorry, that's a rabbit trail. All right. Well, I think Adagial, I don't think the passage in Revelation 20 says anything about a compass. It's talking about encompassing, like circling a camp, not a compass itself. I hope that makes sense. Stacia, you say, wouldn't Luke 21:22 clarify this? It says, all that is written is fulfilled, which was of the Old Testament, which also included the Battle of Gog and Magog. Well, I don't know. You see, we've had this discussion before, Stacia. Let's see here. Luke 21:22. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Let them in Judea flee. Yes, yes, yes. And I remember looking this up. It's panta. It's all. It does mean all in a very generic sense. So Magog, let me see, where is that in the Old Testament? That is Ezekiel 38. Son of man, meaning Christ, set thy face against Gog, the land of... Oh, wait, no, that's not Christ. I'm sorry. I misspoke. Son of man, he sometimes talks to the prophet as the son of man. So the son of man here, I believe, is Ezekiel. He says to Ezekiel, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, behold, I'm against you, O Gog. I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws, bring thee forth, and thine army and horsemen with a great company. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer, all his bands, house of Togarmah. Be thou prepared, prepare thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled, and be thou a guard unto them. After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come to the land that's brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel. Against the mountains of Israel, interesting, which have always been laid waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and shall dwell safely, all of them. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands, and many people with thee. Thus saith the Lord God, it shall come to pass that at the time shall things come into my mind, thou shalt think an evil thought. Thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, to take a spoil and a prey. Turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are inhabited, upon the people that are gathered out of the nations which have gotten cattle and goods. Okay. Well, so this is interesting. It is definitely interesting, Stacia. He's saying that they would come up against his people Israel. As a cloud to cover the land in the latter days, I'll bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me, when I shall be sanctified in thee, O Gog, before their eyes. I feel like, Stacia, that I want to study this again, go through it once again, because it's prophesying that Gog and Magog, God's going to use them against Israel. And because of that, I'm starting to feel like in this passage, I don't know about the Revelation 20 passage, if it's the same or not. But in this passage, because he's prophesying against Israel, it seems like that has to have been accomplished. This part. Because there's no more Israel that I understand after the time of Christ. There's no more Israel in prophecy. Not on earth. So to me, this is interesting, and I would want to restudy this to see if I can iron out the differences between the two and make sure I fully understand it. Yeah, Adagio, that's an interesting thought about the compass and the North Pole. I appreciate that. Yeah, the Emerald Throne. A lot of people are thinking about that stuff. Have asked about it before on the call here. It's very cool. Joe Fisher, you say Haman and Esther was an Agagite. Interesting. Okay. Tomcat, you say you think Gog and Magog is a battle event where an invading army goes to kill, pillage a nation, yet the invaded nation defends the attack and in turn goes to invade and pillage the invading nation. Interesting. Yeah, Stacia, I'll try to do that. That's 2 videos you've got on me now. That's 3 videos that I need to put out from this live stream. Ouch. We'll see how that goes. I'll do my best. I don't like letting these topics go because I feel like if y'all are asking, it's important, you know, and we'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do. I've wanted to do another Gog and Magog video since the first one anyway, so this maybe gives me a little more motivation for it. Maybe I'll get to that pretty quick here. Let me just put that on my notes. Revisit Gog and Magog, specifically Ezekiel 38. Has already happened. Yeah. What I'll be looking at, by the way, in that Stacia, is I'll be looking at the histories of before the time of Christ, because I want to make sure that there's not a time when this nation, Gog, Magog, actually was brought against, and many other nations with it brought against Israel in some way. because then that would conclude that it is different than Revelation 20's Gog and Magog. And I'm not saying it is for 100% sure. I'm just saying it's a theory I'm having right now, I'm thinking about. So anyway, I'm going to look at all of that and maybe revisit the whole thing, see if I can bring more to it. I think that's a good thing. All right. So Sam Big had one more question about the 7,500. And so let's do that question real quick, and then we're almost done here. Okay, does that fit on the screen? I think it does. Yeah, okay. So let's do that. Let's talk about this. So you ask me if it's the year 7,500, meaning that because we know it's 5,500 from Adam to Christ, according to the Septuagint and all the writings we've talked about, and you've seen the videos I've done on that, that because we're in the year 2000 and such, that it's the year currently 7,500 from Adam, and that would put us past the 7,000 years and in the middle of the 8,000 years, right? So we would be at about 7,500 according to what you're talking about. And so we'd be in the middle of some time period that's kind of outside the realm of really prophecy, right? And that's where it's interesting, because I think what has happened, and there's a lot of talk online about the works of different people who have studied our chronologies and say that we're not in the year 2024, that it's messed up. Our chronologies are messed up. And of course, they've redone the calendars a few times. There was the Byzantine, the Julio-Claudian, then the Gregorian, and all sorts of calendars in different countries around the world have actually adhered to one or the other from a long time back. In fact, some still do. They have different calendars than us. But that being said, the idea that the chronology is accurate is now under heavy contention by many, many people and scholars. We've got Herbert Illig, we've got Fomenko, we have, let me look it up so I don't misspeak. There's a lot of them, but let's see here. Phantom Time is what we're talking about. Missing History. Florin Diaku, Gary Kasparov, Gunnar Heinsohn, Ulrich Niemitz, Herbert Illig, and of course, a lot of people think that some of this started with Joseph Justice Scaliger's work back in the 1600s. So there's all of that, and just to say that a lot of the chronology is under question right now. Of course, again, this is one of those things the mainstream isn't going to tell us. It's not going to talk to us about. They don't want us to think that there's some big conspiracy that our calendars are that far off, because if they were that far off, it would give more credence to Christ. So the reality here is this, that I can't say for sure exactly what year we're in, Sam Big, but I personally, based on my research, and I've studied a bunch of these guys I just talked about and what they said, tried to get a handle on what could be the possibilities there. I believe that there is about 500 years worth of screw up in the chronology that we've got. So I believe that we're more likely in about the year 1500 than we are in the year 2024. And so that would put us, instead of at the middle of the 8,000 years, it would put us at the end of the 7,000 years, right before the end. And by that, I mean the end, because as I'm going to do very soon, I have a video prepared just about on the 8th day of prophecy, the 8,000 years. I've found references to it in multiple places, and I'm going to be going over that in that video. What happens in that 8th day? Well, it's different. It's different. In fact, it becomes spiritual at that point. So not to ruin it or have a spoiler here, but at the end of the 7,000 years, it's supposed to be cut off. Flesh and material is supposed to be cut off. And so I truly believe that we are at the end of the 7,000 years right now, not at the 7,500 year mark. So I hope that helps you think about it more. I can't give all the evidence for that on this live stream, but I hope it helps you see kind of where I'm coming from on that and why that would make a lot more sense in terms of the prophecies than if we were past the 7,000 years already. Then it kind of breaks some of the prophecies. And I wouldn't really understand it fully if that was true. I wouldn't understand it fully. I think it's still possible that could be it could be a possibility, but my spidey sense tells me no, that it's actually we have some problems. So with our chronologies. So yeah, the 8th day video will be good. It won't necessarily talk about all that. Now I have a video called it's called What is Phantom Time? And if you haven't seen that one yet, Sam, maybe that would help with some of the context surrounding the missing chronology that we've got, the missing years. It presents some of those ideas that are out there and then shows a timeline of what it should look like, probably. So that might be interesting to you if you want to go down that thread. But all right. So I think that's good. At least I've given you what I feel about that, and I'll let you take it from there. But let's see if we've got any other topics. The only other topic is Rafa Sieber. You asked if there's a church denomination that I feel closer to than others, possibly. It's hard because based on my excuse me, let's see here. Let me do this. Just take this off. Take the title off for a second here, but it's hard for me because I haven't been a part of every denomination, right? I can only see from the outside some of them. I feel closest to, honestly, still, I feel closest to a Southern Baptist mentality just because that's what I grew up in. I was in a Presbyterian church for a while. They have a lot of things I like. In fact, there's some Presbyterian churches that are actually preterist in nature in their belief systems, mostly not the mainline Presbyterian PCA churches. Most of them are not preteristic in nature, but some Presbyterian churches are preterist. I've heard that some Church of Christ churches, I believe, are preterist in nature. So not that that's the key thing for me either. See, that's the thing I think is important, is that just because they agree with you on one thing doesn't mean they're the best church in regards to all the other things either. So some of that has to be considered. But I guess I just still feel that because I grew up in the Southern Baptist church, that the Baptist kind of doctrine and belief system is the most like my belief system. But there's a lot of things there I don't agree with. And so if I had to take the bits and pieces I would pick from the different denominations, there would be quite a few that I would have to draw from to say that's what I believe. But anyway, I hope that's a little bit of an answer. It's not probably good, but it's the best I've got. I haven't been a part of any other denominations in a long time. I've attended Assembly of God churches. I've attended Church of Christ. I've attended Presbyterian and Protestant, Baptist, Southern Baptist. I've attended some Pentecostal churches. Of course, that would include the Assembly of God and all those. So I hope that helps a little bit. But yeah, I'm probably pretty close to Southern Baptist still in most of my beliefs. But I'll be honest, like now the Southern Baptist Church is really steeped in Calvinism, which I now disagree with most of Calvinism. And then the eschatology is different now. So it's hard to say even. It's really hard to say. That's a terrible answer. It's not a good answer. That's what it is. That's what it is. I'm just in the denomination of loving God. How about that? So are you, by the way. All right, guys. Well, I think we're at time. We're past time. We did a long one today, and I hope that it's been fun for you guys. Thank you for your time today, and I appreciate each and every one of you and your participation in the chat. It makes it what it is, and I thank you so much for that. I hope that you guys have a great week, and that this stuff spurs you on in your studies, and then next week bring more topics. And again, I'll try to get
a couple videos out this week at least on the topics that we kind of left to the side. Hopefully I can study a little bit on those and give you a little better answer than I would have been able to give you without it. So God bless you guys. Again, remember to pray for each other, pray for me, and have a great week. Take care. Bye.